Hello everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. Today I'm going to talk about finishes for cutting boards. So why do we even bother to finish cutting boards? Well, as woodworkers, of course, we want them to look nice, but the other reason that's good to finish cutting boards is it actually seals the wood, but it only seals it for a time because, as I said, with cutting boards, you're washing and cleaning them, and it doesn't take long for whatever finish you put on there to literally wash right off. And most people do not reseal cutting boards. So when they get finished the first time, they seldom get finished time and time again. It's usually one finish, and after that they start getting their own patina. Some of the products that I don't recommend include things like lacquer, shellac. Shellac is actually an excretion from the female lac bug that's excreted onto branches, and then it's scraped off. So we really don't know what's in that by the time we get it. But even things like varnish, varieties, those sorts of things, and even tung oil, I don't necessarily recommend unless it says food grade on it. And the reason for this, these kinds of products come with all sorts of different ingredients in them, and we really don't know everything that's in them. So you really want to use an abundance of caution when you use those. You also don't want to use things like fats and lards because they can attract bacteria very quickly. There is one thing that you do need to be cautious with, and that's allergies. And a lot of people have nut allergies, walnuts, peanuts, all sorts of different kinds of nuts. Now, a lot of people will say, well, you can't use peanut oil on cutting board. Sure you can. There's no reason that you couldn't use a peanut oil on a cutting board, as long as there's nobody in your family that's allergic and nobody that's coming over to visit who's going to be allergic. Because sometimes even the smallest bit of oil, even on something as small as a cutting board, depending on how recently you applied it, it might affect somebody. But if you're only using it for your own family and there's nobody with peanut allergies, there's no reason that you can't use any of those nut oils. The preferred finish for covering a cutting board is some kind of an oil, and there's basically two kinds of oils. There's what we call drying oils and non-drying oils. And the truth is that all oils harden, but some of them take years and years, even decades. So when we say drying oils, we typically mean drying oils or oils that will dry in overnight or in maybe a couple of days. Now, there's all sorts of different kinds of oils. Vegetable oils, there's nut oils, and seed oils. The list is long, and I'm going to give you some partial lists of it. Now, I know there's a lot of information in this video, but don't forget there's going to be an article on this on Woodwork Web. So you'll be able to go to that article, and I will write everything on there that I've researched. In fact, I'm even going to give you at least one link to research that people have done researches on wooden cutting boards, and I'm going to put a link on that so that you can actually see some of the information that I've looked up myself. But I wanted to give you a list of some of the oils that you can use. Other than what I've already listed, here's some more oils that you could use on your cutting boards. Almond oil, coconut oil, hazelnut, palm oil, pumpkin seed, avocado, cottonseed, orange oil, peanut, sesame, canola, grapeseed, lemon oil, pine seed, soya oil. And that is only a partial list. There's so much that you could put on cutting boards. The only thing you have to figure out is what is going to be the use. Is it for use in your own family, or is it going to be something that you're making commercially? If it's something you're going to be making commercially, you'll want to put that on your label so that people will know when they're purchasing it what kind of oil is on there. Particularly if it's some kind of a nut oil, just so that you don't run the risk of somebody having an allergic reaction to something that's on your cutting board. When it comes to oils, a lot of people have told me, Colin, you can't use vegetable oils because they go rancid. Well, yes, they do go rancid. They go rancid if they sit in the bottle for years at a time. I don't even know if they go rancid on a cutting board, but let me tell you, if you've got a cutting board and the oil on it has gone rancid, you probably have bigger problems going on than a little bit of oil on your cutting board, because it means that you have never cleaned that cutting board. And as I've said earlier, every cutting board needs to be cleaned after use, washed with warm soapy water, wiped off, and allowed to dry thoroughly. That is the best way of reducing any incidence of bacteria or anything on there that could be harmful. I said I would talk in more detail about this, and this is mineral oil. Mineral oil is actually a byproduct of the petroleum industry. So the gas and oil that you put in your car, this is a byproduct of that process. Another thing that's a byproduct of that is paraffin wax. It's also a petroleum product, and a lot of people use this for preservatives, making jams, you know, the wax to cover jams and so on. Both of these are byproducts of that. So if the good news with this is, because it is that process, there's almost no chance of it harboring any bacteria. So that's the good news with this. The bad news is, if people are a little bit particular about what they're putting on their cutting boards, or maybe what they're ingesting, this may not be the ideal thing. People that are particularly people who are a bit sensitive about, for example, genetically modified foods, they're definitely not going to want something like this on their cutting boards as a petroleum byproduct. But I've never heard of any problems with it. There's nothing that I've ever heard. I believe I'm sure it's a safe product. I personally wouldn't use it, but I know a lot of people do, so it's there for you to make that choice. I have one little item that just cropped up when I was finishing sanding on this cutting board that we made the last time. And if you look closely, you'll notice that there's a crack in that. On a new cutting board, you could fill that crack with an epoxy glue and make sure that it gets into the pore, and then sand it over top. If you develop a crack in an existing cutting board that you're using, it's probably best to throw it out. This is the last thing that you want in a crack. This means that I would never use or sell this cutting board, even if I did fill it with epoxy. It's just too great a risk. This is where bacteria and different things can hide in there, and that's one of the things that you never ever want on a cutting board. So we're going to finish it today, but then it will be scrap wood. Today I'm going to use walnut oil on my cutting boards, and all of these oils, it doesn't matter which one you select, they're all going to give you basically exactly the same look. So if you're looking for a different look from a different oil, you're probably not going to get it from any of the oils that we've discussed today that don't have any kind of a dye in them. They'll just give you a nice, rich looking cutting board, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Well, that concludes our video on cutting board finishes. And before I go away, I want to talk about oily rags. I just want to remind you, I think a lot of you already know, we never bunch up oily rags and throw them in the garbage or throw them anywhere. You always want to make sure that they're unfolded, leave them outside somewhere, preferably on something like a rock. Let them dry out for a few weeks before you throw them out, because we don't want these starting fires in our workshop. That just is a bad day all around. So I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, there will be a full article on Woodwork Web on this, and the link to that is in the description box right under the video. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned because we've got a whole bunch more videos to do.